seeing Loki pontificate about love and hypothesize about the analogy of what it means and all of that. It's something that I didn't know that I needed, but I'm glad I got. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Episode 3, Lamentis of Loki is finally dropped. We pick right up, right after where the last episode ended. So as soon as Lady Loki, who we'll now refer to as Sylvie, and Loki jump through the door, we pick up right on this episode, which is fun because this episode feels very much like an old school Star Trek episode. If you're a Trekkie, you'll understand that when you go to a planet, you're marooned on that planet, you gotta kind of figure out how to get off that planet. That's what essentially happens here. Sylvie and Loki head to the TVA first, and we don't quite figure out what Sylvie is looking for. We don't quite get the answers to what she is, because as she's going through, unbeknownst to her, she doesn't have powers in there, so she has to get by on her hand-to-hand combat, which she is highly skilled at, but obviously a bit undermanned from what she thought she was going to be able to do in there. So she goes through, and unfortunately gets sort of overpowered. Loki finds her, and they both sort of have to go on the run. They have her tit for tat, and then the Tim pack that is used to get the TVA folks from one place to another gets them from TVA to Lamentis. Lamentis, like we've established before in previous episodes, is a location where an apocalypse is happening. So the end of the world is taking place as one of those next level events where everything there is going to go terribly wrong. Unfortunately, that Tim pack that they used is on low battery, and unfortunately, they have to figure out a way to power it up. So this episode is more so about the two of them, Sylvie and Loki, getting past their differences and getting to know each other a little bit. And it's really fun to see the moments. Again, I am a sucker for the moments when there's dialogue, and when Loki and Sylvie are just sitting in a train talking, that's when this episode shines for me. So their plan is to take that Tim pack, get on the train, because this world is leading, but there's a siphon of train that are taking people to safety, so they think. But on that train, they're thinking about getting to the Ark to sort of power up the Tim pack so they can get to wherever the next destination is. While discussing things, and Loki's having these moments, which has some really good heart-to-heart situations, one of them being the most about talking about Loki and his mom, and where he learned his powers, and why he's not probably all powerful in magic, but he learned it from his mom. And you get to see those moments of just hints of goodness with the relationship that he had with his mother, who he mentioned she was adopted, and then Sylvia's like she's adopted. So there are some parallels that they have from world to world. With all of this talk about his mom, I feel like there is going to be a moment where we get a time jump where, sort of where Thor had with his mom in Endgame. I think Loki's going to get to have that same sort of a moment with a version of Renee Russo. I just feel it, like the way they keep bringing her up, it has to happen. But they also start getting on the subject of love, and that's why I sort of brought up at the cold open the love aspect of all of this. He goes and pontificates and gives this great analogy that doesn't quite stick the landing or work, and Sylvie calls him out on it. But the biggest thing is that we learn that there is a sexual fluidity to both Loki and Sylvie, and that he is bisexual. Most people, and I sort of agree, I feel like he might be more on the pansexual thing, since he can shapeshift and change his being. He sort of just goes with whatever, but he is still on the sexual spectrum, which is pretty dope to have a major character like that represent a group of people who probably weren't feeling represented before, which is kudos to you, Marvel and Disney, for bringing that up. But during all of this, Loki doesn't really know how to do lay low and do corporate espionage, and he sort of gets drunk. And getting drunk, people start noticing him. He switches out of his uniform and puts back on the TVA uniform for reasons, and then he gets seen, and they have to sort of fight and break out of that train sequence and have a pretty awesome quasi one shot, but running tracking shot of them trying to escape and get to the Ark before the planet blows. And it ends on a super fun just note when the ark gets destroyed, they look up at it and they know that, like, okay, they're stuck here. Because while they try to escape from that train, not only is the Timpack now powered down, the Timpack is broken. Like wherever Loki was holding it on him, it broke. So they make that mad dash. They see the arc drop, and just the look on Sylvie's face, that kind of she just turns around and like, well, we're screwed. It's very much of a Star Trek thing where they're marooned on this planet, and which is fun. What's crazy is that in this episode, other than that brief moment of piecing together from when they run from the door to the part at the very beginning of the TVA, there's no TVA in it. Mobius really is not in this episode. This episode is strictly about Loki and Sylvie, which is great to sort of establish their tit for tat, almost like a brother sister type of thing going. Probably what he would have had with Hela had she not been trying to murder everyone. But the biggest thing I think that sort of comes out of this entire episode is that there's a cold open to this episode with Sylvie and the TVA soldier that she captured before. And there's a moment where she is using her powers to sort of get into her mind and take back what we thought was her imposing a situation into her brain, but we later find out that she is using a flashback that they have and that they use, that she has hidden, and unlocking that to put her in a comfortable situation so that she can get some type of truths from. So the reason why this is important is because we were told that the timekeepers are the reason why these the TVA members were created. Like they created them sort of like, you know, how God creates man, sort of like the timekeepers created them. So they should not have any past memories. But what Sylvie says is like, no, that's not correct. They're variants, just like we're variants. They're just all variants that work for TVA. So there's clearly something underlying happening with the timekeepers and all of this that they put a veil over all of them to get them to believe something that is not. And I think that's sort of what Sylvie is probably trying to get at. She was trying to get to an elevator and trying to get to somewhere to another level. I think she knows something more about what's happening in the TVA than she's letting on, and giving that bit of a clue opens up that they don't quite, those folks that are in there are sort of like sheep and they don't quite know what it is that they're getting into, which is going to be fascinating to go to in the future. This is a fun episode. Really fun, quick, fast paced. But I think that the heart of it, again, like in episode 1 where Mobius and Loki were just having those one-on-one combos, when this show is at its best is when Sylvie and Loki are just sitting at a table and just chit-chatting, to see how similar and how different they are and how their lives on completely different timelines are very much the same, but also so different. It is going to be interesting to see how they get off this planet. It's obviously going to have to be some of those TVA members coming in to find out. They found where the variants are. I don't know how they do, but they have to basically sort of do what Loki and Mobius did to search where they would go. This is what they're going to have to do to find them, probably at the last minute. But I also think that like they sort of established that, yes, this is where this Nexus level event is happening, but I think if they were able to find a ship or find something to get off of that planet or that moon and to get to somewhere else, they might have been safe. Sort of if Ragnarok was still happening on Asgard, if they were able to get off of Asgard before they're destroyed, I think they would be fine, and they'd just be these sort of variants floating around time. But it's fun. This is a very fun show. I think I'm loving more and more when they have these moments where, okay, cool, episode 2 was super big where we put in a bunch of different layers on top of telling the story, but then let's slow it down a little bit and just have some character beats. I like when a show, you can take those times when you're doing television, when you're doing films, you're like, now we only got an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, let me get as much action bang as you possibly can. This one gives you time to breathe, and I'm much appreciated. What's weird is that we're halfway there. We're only getting 6 episodes of this. So and I know a second season is already in development, but if we're only getting 6 episodes, we sort of need to get in this next episode kind of the crux, because if this is the bridge part to the middle, episode 4 sort of needs to be the crux of whatever the big climax or the big reveal is of this entire series. And if it's a matter of deconstructing the TVA to say that these religious figures aren't as big as or as real or as honest as what they say they are, then that might be what needs to be happening. But I think episode 4 has to be the one where we get there, because unfortunately we've seen that Loki and Sylvie neither of them are really the villains. We have sort of both made them the vigilante heroes, if you will, like, or at least the protagonist from the eyes of the viewer. So there needs to be some type of villain or climax or story thread put into 4 to make this go from 5 to 6, as opposed to us just hopping from show to show and just doing character moments. So I enjoy it, but I think it's time to kind of push the metal a little bit and give us what the actual thesis of this series, at least season 1, is. What did you guys think about Lamentis? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcast. We're there. We're doing Marvel pair-ups with Loki and other time-traveling shows and movies. And we also have our classic podcast where we talk about all the sequels, reboots, remakes, and prequels. And we talked about The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, which is not good. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.